Hi everyone, it's Colette from Brand by Me. Welcome to episode 5, in fact, of our YouTube series, How to Steer Your Brand Through Turbulent Times Like These. So this week, our focus is how to stay visible. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start by talking about a little bit of a perspective on what I'm seeing happening. I'll start actually by talking about what staying visible maybe looks like at this time and how that's different to normal. I'll then go in and give you a couple of observations I've seen about the big brands. And then I'll talk about smaller businesses, social change organizations. And then I'm going to go into talking about individuals. So I said first, visibility at this time takes on a different meaning. And it's really something that I know people are struggling with. Now, I talk more about barriers and blocks and overcoming them in the What's Stopping Us session, which will be next week. But really, I think it's important for us to redefine what we mean by visibility at this time. My business coach, Harriet Minter, gave me some really good advice when I was thinking about doing these. She said, it's not about mass reach this time and looking at, peak views and mass visibility, at least not for a small organization like Brand by Me, and certainly not for me. What it's about, and I think this is true for all brands, it's about maintaining and maybe sort of reaching out, standing out, and maintaining your connection to the people that really need what you do, so they can see you and understand it, particularly at this time, and they know that you're there for them. Now, we're here for you is massively overused language at this time, isn't it? Like, we're getting a lot of that, and I'm going to talk about that in a sec. But really, in terms of visibility, that's what we need to focus on. It's who really needs what we do, and how can we connect with them. And connect is really important. Engage and connect with them, not just broadcast out to them because we want to cut through the clutter or think we just need to be present. So once we understand that, it's about really maintaining that connection to the people that really need us the most, it's important to understand why they need us. And the really big question for me is, why would people need you right now? And when I say right now, that right now is changing. So as we go through, when I did an event, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, but I did an event yesterday for charities, and I chaired a panel. On the panel, they had a couple of research agencies, which was super useful. Now, yes, they do charity research, but they did look at public attitudes. And what they said is, both organizations said week by week, public attitudes are changing and shifting. So likewise, week by week, what your audiences need from you might evolve, might change. So it's really important that we're understanding that. So I said I'd give you a bit of a big brand perspective for me at the moment. And I might be a little bit hard on the big brands sometimes, because obviously at this time I think there are some brands that are really nailing their communication and their visibility, and using their visibility as a platform to really reach out and help people on a larger scale. And I think that's amazing. But I mean, I like many of us, staying in, I'm watching a lot more TV, which means I'm seeing a lot more advertising. And I used to work in advertising. Some of you might know that. And we're in, week 6, 7, week 8, seeing on TV is because of the lag and the time it takes to create communication. We're seeing people come out now with maybe advertising that reflects our current situations. So we know you're all at home. We need to stay at home. Now, obviously, the government need to tell us that in advertising, and that's one thing. But everybody else, we need to stay at home. We know you're at home right now. We're all in this together. I mean, I have to say, you can see my voice, sigh, because actually at this time, week 7 and in, they call it slice of life advertising, and I'm not sure if that's the best use of big brands communicating to us, is just to have empty messages of we're all together and we're still at home. I think we need to go further than that, because actually, whereas even at the beginning, that would have been an appropriate response, maybe. And even then, back in week 1 of this, we had a little bit of a laugh around those emails. We're in it together. We're here for you. That now we're seeing the TV advertising equivalent of that. And actually, whereas, showing people's reality, it might show insight, but unless you're really adding value and thinking about how to truly connect with people, actually it's falling a bit flat. On a personal level, I'm finding it quite claustrophobic. Um, and so, and Danielle said she's actually put off a bit by some big brands' response to staying indoors. Yeah, we know this. I'm exactly the same. I'll give you a tangible example. Tesco have a campaign called Food Love Stories. What that's been about before all this kicked off was about individuals, people at home, customers sharing their sort of signature recipes. Really nice. So grandma's jerk chicken or so and so's this. And it was really good. It was a source of ideas. The recent Tesco advertising is we're all at home and food is about showing love. And again, as Danielle says, we know this. We know this already. Why did they stop the food love stories, the recipe ideas? That would have been a much better use of time, particularly now. I don't know about you guys, but I am doing a lot of cooking and having to get creative with ingredients. And I'm loving the challenge of it. But I think that could be a brilliant way of using that ad space productively. I read an email from Google this morning. So Google is the platform on which Brand by Me is basically built. So we get their kind of businessy. This time, actually, they've done a really good job in email of responding to this crisis and helping their customers through it. Actually, I'm finding the emails super interesting. So they had a few insights on what they're calling stay-at-home consumers, which is obviously all of us. They said, and we know this, people are feeling a mix of uncertainty, anxiety. Certainly the boredom is starting to kick in from some people, so there's a little bit of a risk around that. And still people are struggling and maybe battling, this turbulent time that we're in and responding, as I said, the research showed week on week. But so they said, from a brand point of view, what people are looking for, not from a brand point of view, sorry, they just said people are looking for ways to stay occupied and new ways to stay occupied, new ways to be productive, and new ways to keep composed and maybe get that sense of balance and equilibrium. And I think that's a great criteria for big brands. Actually, looking at the role of our communication is really how do we stay occupied, how do we help people be productive, and how do we keep people composed and connected? And I think that's a really good criteria if we're thinking about the role of big brands communication at this time, rather than just some empty brand statements around we're in it together and stay at home. So I'd love to hear any examples you've got of big brands that are doing it well or not in the comments. Do comment. I'm looking, you can see me looking there. I'm keeping an eye on the box. But I'm going to move on whilst that's coming through. And at the end, as we do normally, I'll come back to questions, comments if I don't see them now. So don't worry about that. I wanted now to turn and talk about smaller businesses like ours, like Brand by Me, smaller brands, and also social change organisations, and non-profits. So whether that's social enterprises, non-profits, because I think it looks slightly different than what I said for the bigger brands. I think that I said I'd talk about an event I did yesterday. I facilitated 2 live panels at an event called How to Engage Audiences through and during COVID-19, and it was targeted at charities and non-profit organisations. But the insights that I was hearing from those organisations were very similar to what I was hearing from smaller businesses at this time, which is that we're feeling a bit hamstrung and the need to kind of grow visibility. Maybe there's a bit of a conflict there in terms of things like not wanting to bother people, feeling like we can't go out there and promote our services. And maybe for some of us, we can't even deliver our services in the same way at the moment because of the restrictions placed around us. But actually, I think there is a unique opportunity for us small businesses and brands that are really do good and like social change organisations. Yes, of course, visibility is not about mass reach and outreach at this stage necessarily. It's all about understanding the people who need us the most and how we can help them right now. And how we can add value. But we have an advantage over the big brands, the more big commercial brands, because we know our customers really well, and particularly at this time, just because of the way we're having to engage, we're having to all be online and do things. You do get more insight. You're able to see more, and there's more commonality maybe in your customers and audiences than before. But also, we have the advantage that people are genuinely rooting for us. People want to support, people want to help. And I said about that charity research before, we've certainly seen an evolution in terms of, that goodwill has always been there right from the get go, but a growth in it and people having a more sophisticated understanding of maybe the challenges for certain organizations, so smaller businesses, social change organizations, in terms of lack of funding and who's getting support. And they're really wanting to help. So there's something in there about us being able to leverage that goodwill, but also fundamentally add value to the people we just know so well. And even if there are brands, if you're somebody that can't deliver your service at this time, so for example, if you work in hospitality or an area that is fundamental events, something that's based on face-to-face communication, it is really important to try and stay connected to our warmest audiences at this time. Even if you can't deliver the service, you can encourage people to pay it forward. You can reassure people that you're still here. You can even give insight into what this time looks like for you. So I said, our local pub, I've talked about them before. At the moment, obviously, they're not open. But what they've been doing through their social media is showing what their staff are doing and what their staff are up to. They've also, they did something like a virtual pub quiz on Wednesday, and the pub quiz is one of the events the locals really love. So that sort of thing is a really good way of maintaining your visibility, even if you can't deliver your service. We've also heard this word pivot. It's really overused word in marketing terms, but at the moment it's key in terms of maybe thinking about how we might have to offer the stuff that we can value and the skills that we have differently to the people that need it the most at this time. And so in order to, and that does need us to stay visible so that people understand that we can still help, even if what we're doing looks slightly different. And that's something that's really important. A brilliant bit of advice, so I'm going to share it with you now. He said, you can't go wrong if you talk to your warm audiences about how you can help right now, and if appropriate, where and how you need their support. And I think that's totally true. And if in terms of visibility, that's all you do at the moment, that is good, that is good enough. That's good right now. That will help you in terms of stay connected, help you sort of evolve and pivot through this and take people with you. It will also help you understand what people need from you so you can start to build, grow, and evolve as necessary as time goes on. So again, I'm going to pause and say, if you have any questions about that at this point, please do stick them in the chat box. If you'll have questions about how to stay visible, if anything I've said really resonates with you, do put that into the chat. And then finally, I wanted to talk about individuals, because as you know, at Brand by Me, one of the things we do is personal brand. We help people on an individual level to find who they are, what they stand for, and how they can really leverage their strengths at work. And I think for individuals, it's a really tough time in terms of staying visible if you work in organizations, particularly if you work in larger organizations. A number of employees are being furloughed at the moment, and you might feel like, actually, I have no reason to communicate at all, and we need to just disappear. It couldn't be, you couldn't be further from the truth. Now is the time to really try and maintain your visibility. Through social media, through platforms like LinkedIn. It's really good to stay connected to your industry, stay connected to maybe, your past colleagues. I know you can't do work for the organization, but there are other organizations that may need what you do. There's lots of, in the charity event I talked about yesterday, there was a lot of talk about need for skilled volunteers. And there are some platforms like Media Trust, and I think there's one called Do It Now that are all about connecting people into volunteering roles so they can really give back at this time, and skilled volunteering roles based on your day job too. So it's worth looking into that. But in any case, no matter what you're doing, even if you use your furlough time to take some much needed time off, work on your garden, whatever that looks like, it's still really good to maintain visibility. You might even use it as an opportunity to switch up your channel. So rather than LinkedIn, you might go out there and proper do your Instagram, or you might do something like I'm doing with this, a live for people. If you've got a community of people that are connected to you, you might do something like this. But actually, so I've talked about that because I think that, it's also a great time, not a plug, but I'm going to say a great time to work on your personal brand, to really understand who you are, deep dive into your values, your purpose, your personality, and think about how those apply at work. And that's something, in fact, that we're starting to be approached now for large corporates to do for our employees, is really help them through personal brand. Um, and then if you aren't furloughed and you're working in a large organization, I'm hearing that people are busier than ever because actually people are under the cosh, and you're having to evolve what you do. We're working at home through a pandemic with families, all that sort of thing. It's placing a lot of pressure. So my first thing to say about visibility is give yourself a bit of a break. It is absolutely fine for you to go, actually, it's just a lot. But what I wouldn't do, when we give ourselves a bit of a break and be kind to ourselves, obviously, what people tend to do is go into kind of head down work mode, just going to get on with the work, not really communicate with anyone. That's something, unfortunately, you really can't afford to do at this time. It's really important that you do stay visible within your organization. So at a bare minimum, try to engage when you're on your back-to-back Zoom calls. Try to communicate with people outside of it. Try to put your views across. Try to engage with your colleagues outside of the calls in a meaningful way. Zoom is not the only, and video call is not the only online communication tool. Neither is email. We've got Slack. We've got other things you can use to really have those conversations. But try and maintain them at a very minimum. Trying to, just communicate kind of the impact you're having, what you're seeing at the moment, and try and sort of be as helpful as you can. And really, really still try and play to your strengths. Really own your personality in this space. That's something that I'm finding is really working for me at the moment. I don't work at a large organization. Obviously, I run my own company, but playing to the strengths of my personality right now, particularly on the event I facilitated yesterday, 300 people on it. I was the chair, really trying to keep people's energy up online, really trying to kind of get a conversation going, really trying to bring the best out of our panelists. These are things you can do no matter what video call you're in. No matter, even if you're a bystander, you can still engage on the chat and things like this. So don't retreat at this time. I think for everybody, it's really important. I know it's tough. Don't retreat. Just try and reach out to, identify the people that might want to hear from you, the people that are closest to you in a professional context, and work out how we can really add value and support each other. So, love talking there. So I'm going to take a break and say questions, comments, please add them into the box. I'm going to recap while you're doing that to say, so if it's about staying visible at this time, there's a couple of things I'm going to leave you with. Understand who needs to hear from you right now and why they do. Work out what they need from you. And as I've said throughout this, lead with empathy, generosity, community. And one of the things I shared in my mailing list, I think I might have talked about this last week, was do small things that connect. So small actions make a massive difference. Small things that are helping you to stay visible, small things that are allowing you to reconnect with the audiences are fine at this point. The momentum of a number of small things will help you lead to the bigger things later. And they also have a cumulative impact if you do them regularly. So I hope that's been helpful. That's how to stay visible. As always, thank you so much for joining in. Do subscribe if you haven't already. And next week we'll be doing a What's Stopping Us session. So for those of you that have tuned in regularly, we introduce a theme one week and then we come back and talk about barriers, blocks, and do a bit of live problem solving and Q&A around that. The other thing to say is what's been lovely over the last week, I've seen people really sharing this. Please do share this with organizations, individuals, brands you think need to hear it, because actually that would be really good. And actually we all need that support in terms of how to steer our brand through turbulent times. This week I am going to hopefully do a little recap video of where we've got to date. So that might be something that's a little bit shorter for you to be able to send round. And I'm also going to do a blog post because next week I've got some really exciting maybe products that I want to talk to you about. as well. And I'm probably not in this call because that will be about the what's stopping us. But if you check out our social, about maybe helping organizations start to think about how we take the learnings that we've learned and embed them into our brand ongoing. Maybe some workshops, just building on my experience yesterday of facilitating the online session. I think there's a lovely bit of workshopping that we can do together to really help us start to embed. And, you know, this is talked about through turbulent times. And maybe rather than reacting to, we need to start looking at the through piece. And that's where workshopping and getting together with teams and individuals one-on-one, that's something we at Brand by Me can really support with. So final call for any questions. If not, today I'm going to leave it there and say thank you so much. I will see you same time next week. We'll be talking about what's stopping us, how to stay visible, what's stopping us from staying visible, and doing live problem solving. And if you do have questions throughout the week, you'll see we normally post this on about Wednesday. You know, reply to our social media posts. And I will see you next week. Okay, take care. Bye, guys.